Fit to Love, episode 146, Once a Cheater, Always a Cheater, or
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Sexy Saturdays. Today's show, Once a Cheater, Always a Cheater. We have back Dr. Debra Mandel. She's also known as the Love Warrior. She's a nationally renowned psychologist, author, blogger, and TV radio personality with 20 plus years experience. Combining wit, wisdom, and compassion, Dr. Debra has helped millions of people overcome their woes and learn to thrive. If you haven't yet met Dr. Debra in person, you may have seen her on many of the top-rated national TV shows, such as Tyra Banks, The Today Show, and The Early Show, or heard her on over 400 radio programs on a variety of topics, especially those centered on love and intimacy. She also co-hosts a weekly call-in advice radio show, Talk It Out, on latalkradio.com, also available as a podcast. Dr. Debra has authored 4 books, including the widely publicized Dump That Chump by Harper Collins in 2007. She has written a Dear Dr. Debra column and has been regularly quoted in articles for many national magazines such as Glamour, Fitness, and Cosmopolitan. Dr. Debra earned her doctorate from the California School of Professional Psychology and was licensed to practice in 1989. She's a member of the American Psychological Association and the Los Angeles County Psychological Association. She works with individuals, couples, and families with a range of specialties from relationship and daily life issues to depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and addiction. When she's not out helping people transform adversity into strength, Dr. Debra loves spending time with her family and friends and her 2 favorite furry felines, Bobby and Prowler. Welcome back, my favorite cat psychologist, Dr. Debra Mandel.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, yes. Every time people say my cat's names, I get a little happy feeling in my tummy. Does that happen for you when you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when I'm that Facebook person who loves watching all those videos on cats and dogs and just a cute lovey, I just think it's such a joy for the soul. It's all love. It's like perfect dose of love every day for your heart.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, they're just amazing. I have mine on as my background on my phone. So whenever I'm having a moment of stress, I just click on my phone, look at their picture, and smile. But they're pretty big guys. They're the little black and white kinds. And I got them, I rescued them. And they were tiny little beings when I got them. And I have to confess now, one of them's 18 pounds, the other one's 17 pounds. And people come over and they say, those are pretty stout cats. I'm saying, hey, they're healthy as all healthy can be. They're 10 years old. They've never gone to the vet. They're indoor cats. They are so healthy. They can still jump on everything. So you know what? It's all right. If they got a couple extra pounds, it's fine with me.
Yes, they're not in a beauty contest. They're just all big bundles of love.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So thanks for having me on again. I'm very excited to talk about this topic because, as you said, the title. First of all, I want to say I love the title of Sexy Saturdays. That is so great. I love that. So happy to be on.
Thank you. Well, that's actually my husband's edition. I was going to do a 5-day a week, and then he said, well, you have to do Sexy Saturdays.
For sure.
And right. And wouldn't you know, it's one of the most popular days.
Absolutely.
So
wonderful.
We're talking about love and the cats and love, and now we're going to go
cheaters.
we're going to close our heart a little bit now and start talking about a cheater. So let's get into that.
Well, it's fun because, you read the title as Once a Cheater, Always a Cheater. And I say once a cheater, always a cheater, or ... question mark, because that is the biggest question that most people have once they have recognized, either caught their partner or their partner confesses that they have been unfaithful. And, is it repairable? Can people work through that? Now, I will say in my 20 plus years experience, dominantly working with couples, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons people come to therapy is because one or the other has discovered that there has been infidelity. And I'm going to say about 75 to 80% of those couples, if they stay with the process long enough and they do the work that they need to do, they get to the other side and they come back and report that their relationship is better than ever. So it can for sure happen. However, not with serial cheaters. So shall I explain what that is?
Yeah, I want us to sort of marinate on that for a second, what you just said. So just in case people who are listening, whether they be single or married, divorced, or in a current relationship or dealing with a current infidelity that you just said, I just feel it's really important to
Sure.
say it again that 75 to 80% of the people that come in with an infidelity in the relationship, if they stick the course and do the work, doing the work would probably be the key phrase here. Doing the work, that they come out on the other side even better than they started. And that's the gift. How many times have you heard people having cancer and then they change their life so dramatically that they thank the fact that they had cancer? They said, cancer saved my life
Right.
because it forced me to change what was not working, that I was unwilling to look at until basically life threw a roadblock in my face.
Absolutely. And so many people think that cheating just occurs and it's, just a bad thing and it's awful and how could somebody do that? But by and large, most good people, if they end up cheating, they're not cheating because they want to hurt the other person. They just got to a level where they were so desperate in the relationship. They felt unheard. They felt that their needs weren't being met. They feel like they tried everything and they're too afraid to leave the relationship because maybe they have other needs that are being met that they're afraid to be without. And so, there's a crack in the relationship. There's a crack in the communication. There's a Grand Canyon that has just occurred where before maybe they were only a street across and they don't know how to talk to each other anymore, but they're too afraid to break free because, we all know that anybody who's been through a divorce, they can be so ugly and so painful, so financially consumptive, and then there's oftentimes children involved. So it's one of those things where it can just be so, so, so overwhelming. But when you start with the premise that the acting out behavior in itself is entirely the cheater's responsibility, 100%. The partner is not in any way responsible for the choice that the cheater made to cheat. But then there's the big but what was going on with both people in the relationship that maybe contributed to that person seeing that as a viable option as opposed to coming within the relationship to try to heal the problems? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I have a friend actually that he was in a relationship and his wife was a drug addict. And it was sort of like it was common drugs, acceptable drugs, nothing like too hard. So, you every people things that people do when they're younger and then it just never stops.
Mhm.
And because they had kids, I could, he felt very obligated and his parents had been together for years and years and years. He felt obligated to stay there because there wasn't divorce in the family. And so cheating, and he ended up cheating, I think was that
Viable option, right? I mean,
viable
yeah.
option. And the besides that, I'm needing sensuality and sexuality and attention, and I need to feel like a man and all the things that he was needing that he wasn't getting from his relationship. It was that self-sabotaging thing, like I'm not going to willingly leave, I'm going to do something subconsciously that's going to force you to want me to leave.
Yeah, that's common actually. But also in that system, the system itself was dysfunctional, right? Because this his was it did you say it was his wife or his
Yeah,
yeah,
wife.
his wife was, she was not looking at her own part in how she was creating this crack in the relationship. And rather than him really confronting it, and when you confront something, by the way, you are risking the possibility that the relationship will end, right? I mean, that's what so many people are afraid of is that you say, you know what? This drug addiction is not acceptable in this relationship. Are you going to change? She says, no. Okay, well, then what's your choice? Basically, if you just made it an ultimatum that if it doesn't change, it's not going to work, then you got to end it, right? But if you don't do that, you don't sort of press on that and force that issue, and then you see that you now have your own righteousness about acting out, then it feels like it's almost like fair play. Well, you're doing that, so therefore I could do this, and then that becomes this seriously terrible negative feedback loop that is just doomed for disaster until it just combusts.
So let's talk about why, and we've already covered some of them. So, for instance, like why people cheat. So, for instance, I just mentioned that this friend that the wife was a drug addict. And so, what was probably, and I'm not sure of all the specifics, but there probably wasn't too much intimacy. So, as a man, he wasn't having any sex. And if he was, it wasn't enjoyable. And there was a disconnect from the relationship. So, he cheated and also to end the marriage. I think that was subconscious self sabotage in order to get out of something that just didn't look like it was going to have a happy ending or ever change. So that's one scenario. What are some other reasons why people cheat?
I think there's the obvious reasons. Oh, I'm not getting enough sex. And that's a common one for guys. It's like my wife doesn't want to have sex. She's preoccupied with the kids, yada, yada, yada. And for women, it's often they may end up in a sexual affair, but by and large, they're often looking for an emotional connection. Maybe their husband works too much. Maybe she's tried many times to say, we need to spend more time together intimately, playing together, doing things, fun things together. And he says, I have to work. Or she says, well, I have to work too. But there's got to be a way that we can do that. Or when people become very resentful and angry with one another, then they start to pad their case for the justification and the rationalization in their mind that that's an acceptable alternative. So whereas it's against their own value system, by and large, most people when they get married or they end up in a long-term relationship with somebody whom they love, they make the commitment, they make the vow, the decision that they're going to be faithful. So when people are willing to do that, but somehow they cross that line, it's usually because they've made a justification in their mind or a rationalization that said, because A, B, C, and D is not happening, therefore now I'm under that clause, that amendment to that agreement that says, but if these conditions occur, then it's okay for me to cross that line.
So I'm sitting here listening to you and absorbing all this and putting myself in that situation and also remembering and thinking about maybe movies and things like that. I want to go back and clarify that 75 to 80% of people who stick with the process and do the work come out on the other side. Is this someone who's cheated one or two times? What about people that have had like affairs, like have all their families or have multiple affairs?
Yes.
Can we talk to that?
And please, let's point out that those are not national statistics. That's my experience and my practice. And I don't know
Yes.
that,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
but, well,
absolutely.
because I mean, it does sound very high, but first of all, the if clause is very important. If people stick it out and do the work, most people end up not wanting to do the work. They either don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they feel too wounded, they are convinced through their religion or through whatever that that is the worst all end all event that could ever occur. And so there is no forgiveness within the relationship. One can forgive from afar, but not within the relationship. So many of those people never stick it out. They come 2 or 3 sessions and they just say, I just can't do this. But there are many others where if both partners are willing and the one who did the cheating is able to say, yes, I understand, I am entirely responsible for that, with no excuses, explanation, of course, but no excuses, it creates a foundation for the other partner to start to feel like maybe there's hope. And if there is hope and both people are willing to amend their behavior and really listen to each other in terms of what was unfulfilling in the relationship, what really needs to change. Again, a crisis that oftentimes promotes a change, it promotes a transformation. Now, that sometimes looks very, very awful to people. What I'm going to say is that at the beginning, there's a high level of accountability that the cheater needs to be available for, which means allowing the partner to look at her or his phone, checking emails, being willing to be able to become transparent in ways that is oftentimes very, very uncomfortable, especially for very independent people or people who have a very strong connection to privacy and that they don't like things being exposed, even if they're doing nothing wrong, but they simply want to just wear that badge of this is mine and you can't have it and you can't see it. That becomes problematic. But if the cheater is willing to say, or the one who's been unfaithful, and cheater has such a negative connotation. And for these couples I'm talking about, it's where somebody strayed, right? They went outside the bounds of what was acceptable in the relationship and they feel a tremendous amount of remorse for it. And it's the awakening and understanding that that has occurred that can sometimes help the other partner understand that they had a role in how it turned out that way, and then they start to look at some ways that they could make changes also to make the relationship safer for their partner as well.
But we're talking about someone who's cheated one time or two times,
Oh,
right?
yes,
Not like
that was your question. Yes. Now, I've had people who have actually been in long-term affairs that they have worked out. I actually worked with a couple, if you can believe this. This is probably going to be outstanding in your mind, like how could this be? But I worked with a couple where the husband, over the course of, I'll just say several decades, had had 9 different affairs, and one of them with a close person within the family, and I won't say who that is just in case they're listening, so I'm not divulging anything confidential, but I mean, and they got through it. I mean, they absolutely, he did individual therapy, she did individual therapy, they both did couples therapy, and they figured it out, and it was really magnificent. So that can happen too, but where it tends to not happen again is where somebody's had multiple affairs across and does not really take accountability, continues to feel sort of that narcissistic sense of entitlement that, you know what, you're just not, you're not going to ever be enough for me, so I'm probably always going to do that. And those kind of relationships, they just don't have a fighting chance at all.
Well, that person who's doing the infidelity has an issue with integrity and
For
commitment
sure,
to themselves,
absolutely,
obviously.
right?
Obviously,
And then
I am in shock about this whole like
I know,
nine and for decades because I think I don't. Yeah, that's
but then you got to wonder how come she never knew? How come she never suspected, right? I mean, there was a part of her that she had to recognize that she brushed so many things under the carpet that he actually had developed this progressive sense of entitlement, which he didn't necessarily start out with. In fact, he probably felt like the lesser of the two early on in their relationship and saw himself as never really sort of meeting her standards. And I think he saw these other relationships as a way to feed his ego that he didn't feel like he was getting those kinds of acknowledgments. Now, again, it's still not appropriate that he did that. But, in some ways, like, well, she doesn't even notice. So I can keep getting away with it. And that's one of the most destructive aspects of long-term infidelity is that people start to make that the norm in their mind as though it's okay. And that becomes a really big challenge.
I'm a big proponent of that. There's no real accidents. Everything teaches us something, and we manifest what it is that we're emanating as well. And do you ever have people who, whether they work it out or not, it sounds like obviously this woman, if it was the woman, yeah, must have acknowledged that she played a huge role in it because she wasn't paying any attention, right?
She did, yeah, and she had tremendous self-growth along the way. She learned a lot about herself. She learned about her absence of communicating her real needs and her real feelings, and she wasn't really a strong person in the relationship. She was more like a puppet. And, he continued to find that less and less attractive as he became more and more confident. He didn't want to lose the relationship because they had been married for so long. They had generations of children and grandchildren, and they had built their empire, so to speak, of, family and friends all around them. So it was worth it for them to pay attention. And it was actually through her getting stronger in the relationship and within herself that she became so much more dynamic and present that, I mean, he almost, I could say, totally fell in love with her again and really was willing to be 100% accountable for his quote unquote wrongdoings, that he recognized that that was just an immature, grandiose, self-centered form of his self-expression, that he had many, many other choices. See, sadly, sometimes people, even though they're intelligent, don't often see the forest through the trees. They don't often see the choices in front of them because they want what they want when they want it, but they're not thinking long term about other alternatives. So they kind of get into their own victim mentality where they perceive that they don't have another out. And so part of the therapeutic process is to teach people that actually the more choices and the more self-sufficient you become, and that the relationship that you're in is a bonus pack, it's not your life-sustaining energy, then people don't feel so trapped in a relationship that isn't working. So they choose to move forward as opposed to feeling like they don't have an alternative.
Well, I had kind of not thought of it like that before. As you were explaining about that behavior, that mentality, that viewpoint of a relationship, and I agree completely. Most people don't recognize what their choices are because most people don't know what their needs are or how they're feeling about that. And so there's no other strategies to get the needs met, and we have these knee-jerk reactions. We're pushed to that point where enough is enough, and we weren't from the place of being able to calmly say, what do I need and how can I get that met in another way? So with that said, if I've been cheated on, whether it be in a marriage or just someone that I've been dating and I need to heal and I haven't been to therapy and we haven't started to work on it yet, Debra, you're going to give us some tools, correct? When we come back from break on how someone can start to heal and sort of move their life forward, even if the person doesn't want to work with them?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And we'll be right back. Do you want to look and feel years younger? Learn more about your hormone health and how to get properly tested. Sign up for the Healthy Hormone Kit at nourishingwellness.com. It features the essential tests you need to tell your doctor to order for you to learn more about your current levels. Plus, you'll receive lots of healthy eating and lifestyle tips to improve your hormone health naturally. Again, that's www.nourishingwellness.com. What does your self-care routine have to do with dating and relationships? Everything. How you treat yourself is the blueprint for how you show others how to treat you. I call this your body blueprint. Ready to change your body blueprint and manifest better quality relationships and physical results? I am giving away free copies of the second edition of Fit to Love, How to Get Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit to Attract the Love of Your Life, when you subscribe to this podcast. Visit fittolove.tv/ebook to download your copy today. That's FIT2love.tv/ebook. Let's transform your body and your relationships. Okay, Dr. Debra, so tell me how I can heal myself or heal this relationship, what I can do if I'm not in therapy yet and my partner or lover doesn't want to go to therapy with me.
In the scenario where you've just been dating somebody and somebody chooses to cheat, you got to kind of wonder what that person's really going to be like as a long-term partner anyway, because there are no confinements that require somebody to not be able to just say, this relationship isn't working for me. I'd rather be with other people. So I would say in that scenario, unless there's some extenuating circumstances, best to move on, but definitely try to understand and make sure that you recognize that you're not at fault for the person actually straying, but recognize if there were things that you do in a relationship that make it maybe hard for somebody to talk to you or communicate their needs, so that therefore it's much less likely that's going to happen somewhere down the line. But again, also keep in mind that all men and all women are not cheaters. There are some who are, and oftentimes really good people will sometimes do bad things, but usually it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So move forward with that so that you don't then are scarred for life, so that you're not then scarred for life and feel like you can never have another relationship or trust somebody. But you'd want to fine tune your picker to make sure that you're picking somebody who is very mature and solid in their ability to make commitments. Now, fast forward to, let's say you have actually tied the knot and you're with somebody it's long term and you recognize that this person has had an affair. Well, I think if the person is unwilling to actually either go to therapy or do some therapeutic work outside of therapy, because there are plenty of books, there are plenty of guidebooks. One of my favorites is After the Affair, and it gives a basic step-by-step scenario about what each person needs to do in the partnership to prevent that from happening again. And some things are very specific, like I said earlier, about being accountable. There's a disclosure section that needs to occur, and regulating how much detail you want to know and how much you don't want to know, and how much transparency there's going to be on the part of the person who did the betraying. And both have to learn how to identify what it is that created that gap to begin with, so that they work together to not let that happen again.
I meant to ask this a little earlier, but it's still a burning question in my mind, thinking of that couple where he, for 9 years or decades or 9 people, is there ever a scenario in your office or with people that you've heard about where someone, doesn't matter which person, has been cheating for a while or has been, unfaithful multiple times with different people, that the other partner kind of lets them sort of even the score and go and do the same thing?
The old tit for tat. I don't
Yes.
think that works. Certainly people have felt inclined to do that. It's a natural impulse in one's mind to entertain revenge, wanting vindication, wanting to have that experience, feeling like it's unfair that somebody else got to break that bond because, they're not going to suffer the same consequences because they get to have the relationship anyway. But by and large, those are not positive ways to approach it. It's much better to understand how it occurred to begin with, what needs to be different, and how to be able to move forward in a stronger, more loving partnership than ever was there before. And that can occur. It doesn't happen all the time, but it certainly can occur.
Excellent. So if someone would like to work with you, whether it be individually or with their partner, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, for all the stuff that I have, it's best to just come to my website, which is www.drdebraonline.com. That's DRDEBRA online.com. And there's lots of snippets from my books and from my radio shows, etc., that allow people to really get to know more about who I am and whether they'd like to become a warrior for love as well.
And if you're listening to the show and this is the first time you've heard me interview Dr. Debra, she did a show previously called Becoming a Warrior for Love, learning how to fight for your relationship. So make sure to go back on the site, fit2love.tv, and find it, or on iTunes, regardless of where you're listening, and download that as well so you can hear more from Dr. Debra. Dr. Debra, thank you so much for being here again. It was a pleasure to have you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Break the vicious cycle of emotional eating and take back your power over food with Dr. Lisa Galper. Visit her site at poweroverfood.com to read her articles, watch her videos, sign up for her monthly email tips, and check out her current classes. The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fit2love.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT2LOVE.TV. Have a fit and fabulous day.